Welcome to Alan's Italy, show number 142. This show is called A Week on the Bay of Naples and covers what there is to see, a general summary of what there is to see in this amazing area of sightseeing in southern Italy. There's a wonderful variety of ancient sites and modern sites and beautiful islands and the extraordinary Amalfi Coast, Greek ruins, Roman ruins, really amazing. And this show is going to show you in great detail where they're located and in a little less detail what there is to see in this amazing area. So I hope you enjoy it. The first map you're looking at is a map of Italy in relation to that part of southern Europe. And you could see in the oval where the Bay of Naples is located. Next, you're looking at a map which shows an arrow going from Rome, which is more familiar to us because we've done a number of shows on Rome. And you can see Florence up there, and Bologna and so on. So from Rome to Naples by train takes a little over an hour, which surprised me when I saw that because I remember it taking a longer period of time when I did that. But trains have gotten faster, much faster. So by train from Rome to Naples is a little over an hour. The suggested place that I say that you stay in this region, and you're looking now at a map of the Bay of Naples, which is what's going to be the focus of this show. I would suggest you stay at Sorrento. You can see right there at the bottom of the map. So the train will take you into the Naples train station, and then you would take a train known as the Circumvesuviana Railroad. It's a local train that goes from Naples to that first circle that you see there, which is indicated as Ercolano, which is the ancient name is more familiar to you, of Herculaneum, right at the foot of Mount Vesuvius, which was one of the towns that were destroyed in the volcanic eruption of August 24th, 79 AD. So the train goes there first. It goes to a number of little towns all along the Bay of Naples. So, the first area that you might be interested in would be Ercolano. Then it continues around, and eventually, and from Naples to Ercolano is probably about a half hour. To Pompeii, probably about 40 minutes, and it continues around until it goes all the way to Sorrento. Sorrento is where I suggest that you stay because it is located in the perfect place to then travel to other places around the Bay of Naples. And those are the things that I have either in ovals or in that rectangle at the bottom, which indicates the Amalfi Coast. So if you look at the map and then look at this list that I have right there, this tells you what I'm going to be focusing on. The things to do around the Bay of Naples. And since I suggest that you start in Sorrento, and the hotel that we stayed in when we were in this region was the Ambasciatori, not exactly in the heart of Sorrento, but right on the bay in a very, very nice location. We had a balcony overlooking the Bay of Naples. It was wonderful. It was just an absolutely wonderful hotel. And you see, a couple of pictures of that now. And that was, an extremely convenient place to then visit other places that we, went to. And again, on day 2, we took the same train that you would take to get to Sorrento, back the other way, and go to Pompeii. Now, there are people who drive along this area, drive to Sorrento, and we did that in 2006, and it was just really, really heavy with traffic, and I just did not like driving along there. So we gave up the car at that point to a parking lot that the hotel provided, and we then took the train, the Circumvesuviana, from Sorrento to Pompeii. Very relaxing. You get off at Pompeii, there you are, and you spend the day there, and then you come back to Sorrento. On day 3, we took a bus ride along the Amalfi coast. You see it right there. Oh, yeah, I'll show you all of these things in greater detail later on. And the reason we took the bus was that I did not want to drive along there, because it's a very difficult ride for somebody who's pretty as anxious as I am about driving. But we took a bus, and when you take the bus ride, I would, suggest that you sit on the right side of the bus so that you could get a view of the Mediterranean Sea. So that's really nice. Plus, as you approach the various towns along there, you get a better view. We'll talk about that in a little while. So, that's a full day, because you would probably want to stop somewhere, get out of the bus, have lunch. We went all the way to Amalfi, which is all the way at the end, and that's where we had lunch, and then got back on the bus, which took us, to Sorrento. Day 4, you could take the ferry to Capri. Now, most people say Capri, which is incorrect. In Italian, that's pronounced Capri, which is a beautiful island, which has 2 parts to it. The part where you get off the ferry, which is Capri, and then the area where you would take transportation to a higher location on the island, which is called Capri. And then, of course, a number of people who go to Capri also go to the Blue Grotto, which we'll talk about a little more later. But that's another full day. On day 5, you would go from Sorrento to Naples, and then and spend the entire day. And I have a couple of museums that I'll mention in a few minutes. And then, of course, there are other choices. For example, if you love Pompeii, you'll probably also love Herculaneum, which is smaller, easier to see, very interesting. Not as touristy, but a really interesting place to see. You could go to one of the other islands, for example, the island of Ischia and the island of Procida. And I'll be speaking about those as well in a little while. Or you could also go to Paestum, which is located south of the Amalfi coast, near Salerno, which is a fantastic ancient Greek site with some really wonderful temples. In fact, the best preserved Greek temples anywhere outside of Greece. So that's a really, really full 7 days of traveling around this area. And you can see that Sorrento provides the transport. This is why we stayed there, because it provided outstanding transportation links everywhere. The bus along the Amalfi coast was located, which started in Sorrento. The Circumvesuviana, which gave us the ability to get to Pompeii, and Ercolano by train. When we actually visited Naples, we did not take the train. We took a ferry. So, but this is an option. You could, so a lot of people take the ferry to Naples and then take the train back the other way to Sorrento. So that's a possibility. And of course, the boats to Capri, the boat to the other islands as well. Uh, Also, you could um, take a boat from Sorrento to the Amalfi Coast. For example, another thing you could possibly do is take a boat from Sorrento to Positano in season. You can't do this out of season. The boats only run during certain seasons. The in season would be probably from late spring through the summer, and that's another way of traveling to various places along the Amalfi Coast. And this little summary that I've given you is an outstanding, um, I would say, if you could swing it, a 7-day trip to this region. I'm not sure how many people spend 7 days. The most I've ever spent was 4 days, which I must tell you is not enough. Especially if you don't plan on coming back here on a regular basis, this is really a 7-day vacation of wonderful proportions. It's very touristy. That could be a hassle, but on the other hand, there is so much to see of different varieties. The Amalfi Coast, pure beauty and just spectacular scenery. Pompeii and Herculaneum, two outstanding ancient sites. Naples, one of the great cities in Italy, a very interesting city. Boat rides to islands that are really very beautiful in their own right. And then a ancient Greek site as well within, a good way of getting there is probably to go back to Naples and then take a train from Naples back down to Paestum. So you may say, well, gee, that doesn't sound so efficient, but it is because it's the fastest way of getting there. So that's my suggestion. And now I'm going to go into specific areas that I mentioned a few minutes ago. So on day one, you're going to arrive into Sorrento. Um, in all likelihood, you'll fly into Naples, and then from Naples, you could take a taxi or a bus into Sorrento. If you fly into Rome, as we did when we were there in 2006, we rented a car and drove into Sorrento. So you could also take a train from Rome to Naples, and then from the Naples train station, you could take the Circumvesuviana uh, train to Sorrento. A lot of ways of getting to Sorrento. Um, the photo you're looking at now is a photo taken by Laura, which I dubbed Sorrentine Sunset. One of the most beautiful pictures that we've ever taken. Laura made a painting out of this, I should say, and it really is a great, great photo of what the Bay of Naples looks like from right next to our hotel. As I said, we stayed at the Ambasciatore, a fabulous hotel, a beautiful hotel, and we spent the first day just strolling around Sorrento. It was I remember it was fun looking at the views mostly, and walking through the town and picking out a restaurant and having dinner. I remember arriving late, so we didn't have that much time. And no matter, you'll probably arrive in the afternoon after all the traveling, let's say, from the United States, unless of course you come from another town. But if you even do that, you're going to arrive in the afternoon. The central place, the hangout, is the Piazza Tasso. I remember that very well. I was in Sorrento in 1998 when it was virtually empty in the middle of February, and there wasn't much going on. It's a very pleasant town, a great place to stay. Of course, in my mind, the best part of the Amalfi Coast and the Bay of Naples trip is Pompeii. As I said, on August 24th, 79 AD, a volcanic eruption from Mount Vesuvius buried the town, and a lot of people were killed. It was a terrible tragedy. The only good thing is that it covered the town in volcanic ash that preserved a lot of the town. And when you see Pompeii, you're going back in time, and you're actually experiencing what it was like, being there to a certain extent. Not, it was a beautiful town. And you're looking at a photo now of what the town looked like 2,000 years ago. It was a beautiful town. And what you're seeing are the ruins, but it's still a pretty fascinating experience. And you need to spend a whole day here. It's huge. And they have a very nice cafeteria with very, very good food. And there are lots of things to see. And you need a full day. As I said, the way to get there is on the train. That was our way of getting there. I know people do drive there as well. So, a fabulous day two is to go to Pompeii, and and there's a book that you could get at the entrance on Pompeii, and you should do that. You should get that book, and it gives you a whole history of it and shows you exactly what to see. People see the Amalfi Coast in a variety of different ways. As I said, we took the bus sitting on the right side going towards Amalfi, the town of Amalfi, at the eastern end, and then coming back the other way, you sit on the left side of the bus. So you always get these wonderful shots of the sea. But as you approach the towns themselves, you get this great shot because the road winds as it goes along, and there are some wonderful places to stop. Positano is the most famous, um, and I know people who've driven the Amalfi Coast Road, and they say it's pretty challenging. The most difficult part, of course, is that when you reach a point in the road that's very, very narrow, you would have to pass a bus, or it might be difficult for two cars to get by each other. So one of the cars would have to back out. Uh, somebody told me that at one point it got so narrow, and they had to move over so far to the right that they heard the car scraping against the side of a building. So these are some reasons why I've never done that. But I found taking the bus to be a wonderful experience. And that's certainly something that you should definitely do. Capri is a wonderful outing. It's close to Sorrento by ferry. Um, it's a beautiful island. It's extremely touristy, but people overcome that in order to try to have a really wonderful time. And you could see the town and have lunch, or go to the one above it, which is Anna Capri. And many people take the boat ride to see the Blue Grotto. which you're now looking at, which is quite an experience with the extraordinary natural phenomenon of having light coming from the bottom through the water, creating this amazing blue um, coloring, and it's really something. Um, and it's a day out. It's a really wonderful day out. The ferry ride there and back, and spending the day walking around and having lunch and so on. So that's a wonderful way of spending a day in that region. I've heard people say that Naples is truly Italy. I don't know. I've also heard people say Rome is in Florence. Who knows? Really. But people love Naples. Um, it's the southernmost city I've ever been to. It's a very very large city. Unfortunately, it's very congested. The traffic is terrible. The congestion is really unbelievable. But it does boast some really extraordinary things. Number one, I would say, in my opinion, of course, the archaeological museum. When Pompeii and Herculaneum were uncovered, the artifacts from those two towns went to the museum in Naples. So that's a great reason to go to Naples to see these really extraordinary artifacts. When you see Pompeii and Herculaneum, you're just seeing the skeletal outline of what the town looks like. If you go to the museum, you actually get to see the pottery and a lot of the artwork, which is amazing. So that's a great reason. The Capo di Monte um, uh, Art Museum is very, 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 very interesting and has some wonderful pieces. And that was I didn't see that when I was there in 2006, but I did go there in 1998. So that's a real experience. Of course, it is reputed that pizza was discovered, created for the first time in Naples, and there were two competing restaurants that boast to that, right across from each other. It's part of the lore of Italy, and I don't know. I've been told that you really can't believe the story that pizza was developed in one of those two places. We went to one of them, Trianon. The pizza was good. Um, it wasn't the best pizza I'd ever had in my life, but it was very good. And that's one of the things you do. Of course, Naples is right on the bay, so if you just arrive by ferry and then just look at the view, the views are amazing. And you walk through the town, and it's a very interesting town. One of the most famous towns, of course, in all of the history of Italy. So a very very worthwhile thing to do. For the rest of your time after day 5, you have several choices, as I mentioned earlier. One of them is to go to the archaeological site, similar to Pompeii, except much smaller, of Herculaneum. And, this town was destroyed along with Pompeii and a couple of other places at the foot of Mount Vesuvius. Very interesting. From Sorrento, you would take the Circumvesuviana train, and that would take you right to Herculaneum. And that would be, a very interesting place to see and walk around. Um, if you'd like a more relaxing type day, you could go to one or both of the islands of Ischia, which is a beautiful island, and Procida, which is much smaller. But both, a very, very nice day out. Find a restaurant and have a very pleasant ferry ride to get there, and then spend time, just walking around and looking at the sights. Or you could go to Paestum, which was an ancient town with amazing Greek ruins. The way to get there from Sorrento, you could either take the bus along the Amalfi coast, which is the long way of going, but some people combine both of those, so they get up really early, take the bus along the Amalfi coast, get to Salerno, and then take a local bus to Paestum, or from Sorrento. I've heard of people who have taken the Circumvesuviana to Naples and then take the train from Naples to Salerno. And what you're going to see when you get to Paestum are amazing Greek ruins. Really extraordinary. As I said, some of the best Greek ruins in the world. And, that's a choice of some of the things you could do during that final stretch if you're lucky enough to be there for days 6 and 7. And that brings us to the end of this show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you take a 1-week trip to this area, this should serve as a very, very handy summary of what there is to see. If you'd like more detail, I would suggest you look at a guidebook, or you could just go to the internet. It's all there. The next show is going to be a show that will focus on the Medici Chapel in Florence, one of the really extraordinary places to see Michelangelo's amazing sculpture. So please tune in. Until then, buonanotte e buona fortuna.